this is a lesson on how to simplify square roots. If I take a look at the square root of 75, that's actually considered an exact value. If I type that in the calculator, I get that digit, 8.6602. That's not an exact value. That's actually a rounded number. So the square root of 75 is an exact value, but it's not in simplified form. In order to simplify square roots, you will need to know your basic square roots. These are your basics that you need to know. So you need to get familiar with those. These numbers under the square roots are considered perfect squares. Those are numbers in which we can do a square root of and get a whole number answer without a decimal. So I'm going to be referring to these numbers throughout. So if I'm looking at the square root of 75, I need to factor 75 into two other factors. And I would like to try to use something with the perfect squares. So for example, 25 times 3 equals 75. 25 happens to be a perfect square. So when I factor this, mathematically it should be the square root of 25 times the square root of 3. The square root of 25 can be converted into its whole number, 5, times the square root of 3. Or we just say that that would be 5 square roots of 3. The square root of 60. If I try to factor 60, I could factor it as 3 times 20. However, the problem with this is 3 and 20 are not perfect squares. They don't show up in my list. So these aren't going to help you simplify the square root of 60. So I need to find different factors. 4 times 15 gives me 60, so I'm going to use the square root of 4 times the square root of 15. The square root of 4 is equivalent to the whole number 2. So my simplified answer for the square root of 60 is actually 2 square roots of 15. The number 800 can be factored several different ways. You can even use trial and error. I could break this down as square root of 4 times the square root of 200. I could use the square root of 8 times the square root of 100. There are more options with the 800. I'm just going to go ahead and use the second one that I have here. The square root of 100 is equal to the whole number 10. So far I could simplify this as 10 square roots of 8. However, I still need to consider all my perfect squares. 8 has a perfect square for a factor. I can break the square root of 8 down into square root of 4 times square root of 2. Now if I simplify each of these, I would have 10 times the whole number 2 times the square root of 2. I can further simplify that to equal 20 square roots of 2. My last example is the square root of 432. Now this one's not as easy to probably come up with factors. You can use a calculator and try to find some things. One thing that I know that does work, I'm going to use the square root of 16 times square root of 27. The square root of 16 can be changed into the whole number 4. But once again, I need to figure out if square root of 27 is actually simplified. And it's not, because 9 is a factor of 27. So my final simplified answer for this one would be 12 square roots of 3.